My dad, Larry Linton, the only true servant leader willing to stand in the arena and fight for your freedoms.
Larry is a man of God, and he will move heaven and earth to protect the people in district.
Too many elected politicians act like chameleons.
My name is Mike. I'm Larry's neighbor. I bought the house behind him. I trust Larry to give me an honest answer.
And what's important to me is faith, family, and my freedom. And I believe these values are also held by Larry Linton.
More important than ever, I believe, in our lifetime to really stand up and fight for what's right. And Larry's doing that, and I'm supportive of it.
We need to replace career politicians in Nashville with leaders willing to stand for what is right, even if it's not popular. People who feel a calling and are not looking to make a profession out of it.
You're not going to find a more honest, straightforward, and passionate individual, I don't believe. Larry is what you see is what you get. He's honest.
Listen, if you are looking for a true conservative who's passionate about the state of Tennessee, the people that live in it, and wanting to make a difference in a meaningful way, Larry's your guy.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As I mentioned in last week's episode, this week will be a bit different because I put together it almost simultaneously as last week's show due to me being in the internet black hole that is the area around the border of North Dakota and Montana. I'll be leaving the Riverton, Wyoming area on Thursday morning after spending the past week and a half with the crews in this area, and I'll be headed further north. The crews that I've been working with have gone on their days off, but the crews up near Bowman, Montana, and Bowman, North Dakota, and Baker, Montana, they're still working. As I also mentioned in last week's show, I get to spend some time over these few days that I'll be up there working alongside my good friend Carlos. The weather it's been getting a bit cooler up here in the area that I'm working. Temperatures have been in the upper 30s and low 40s every morning so far. A few days I've seen the temps in the lower 80s and high 70s during the middle of the day though. The high temperatures are not much of an issue though because there is very little humidity. All in all, it's been very pleasant being out in the field, a far departure from my times in West Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. This week's show will be mostly comprised of video clips that I've pulled from various sites and sources on the internet, even some of the commie-controlled sites like CNN and MSNBC and others, which will show you that one of the biggest, if not the biggest, threats to our liberty is today's Democrat Party. Because of the video clips, it'll be a little bit more than 30 minutes, but pay careful attention to the evidence being presented using the the commies' own words. They do not want to govern this country. They want to rule this country. I would also be remiss if I did not put out a correction to some of the information I discussed in last week's show as it related to the Sevier County Government's investment situations. One of the residents informed me, after stating it was kind of funny to hear about this situation being discussed on a podcast all around the state and the country. Anyway, he informed me or corrected me that there were not any sewer lines being put in, just water lines. He did go on to state that there was no mention of the water line coming into the subdivision either until the work already started to put it in. So there is no telling that sewer lines could come their way in the future. That whole situation is a reminder, folks. We need to pay attention to what our local government is doing. Attend their public sessions as well as check out their websites where they should be putting their meeting minutes online for the residents to review. In the end, that is how they end up doing stuff like this to us and not for us. They'll claim they posted the information for everyone to see and read, but they count on the fact that the voting public will not see or read about anything they are doing. And as another reminder, the apathy of the voters here in Sevier County has resulted in sending one of the county commissioners, the ones that did this water and sewer thing, onto bigger and quote unquote better things in the Tennessee General Assembly. When you don't inform yourself about the machinations of the government and about the candidates in the primary races, you get the government you deserve. So now with a recap and intro completed, let's get on with this week's episode of the Liberty Leadership and Lies podcast, where I will talk about how and show you evidence that it is the modern Democrat Party that is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, threat to our liberty. So let's take a stand in the arena together again this week, folks, and get on with the show. Welcome to the Liberty, Leadership, and Lies podcast. On this show, we will discuss the assaults on our liberty by the very institution we the people created to secure our liberty. We will also compare and contrast the actions of people in leadership positions to the servant leadership that is needed to protect our God-given, constitutionally protected rights. Additionally, we will break down the many lies that elected and unelected officials in government and media spin every day in order to secure for themselves positions of power and influence that are antithetical to the system of government our founding fathers created and passed down to us. All right, folks, we're back. Now let's get on with some video evidence that shows it is the commies who are the genuine threat to our liberty in this great nation. This week's episode, again, will be primarily comprised of video clips that I've been gathering for a few weeks now. Not all of them will be the commies showing us all the evidence we need to know that they are the true threats to our liberty, but there will be a few that also back up a lot of what I speak about weekly on this program. Now, here's the first video, but let me warn you from the outset, it's pretty lengthy. It's about 5 minutes in total, but I will break it up a bit for you. Now, this video is recent testimony provided to Congress from a former Border Patrol agent that recently retired. Keep in mind, though, if these were the orders his sector received, they are the same orders every Border Patrol sector along our southern border did receive. Give it a listen and try not to lose your cool while watching it.
Throughout the first 3+ years of this administration, I saw a steady decrease in the countries we could send people back to. For the first time in my 25 years, and under 5 different administrations, whether through neglect or on purpose, I saw a large-scale lapse in our ability to return people to their country of origin.
Okay, I want to interject right here and show you or tell you that we all know that it wasn't through neglect that our country did not send illegal border crossers back to their country of origin. It was most assuredly on purpose. That is why you see the commies, along with some establishment types in government, fighting so hard to not pass the SAVE Act, which would prevent illegal immigrants from voting in our elections. It is on purpose that our government is keeping them here in this country so they can dilute one of the most basic of our rights as a citizen in this country, and that is to determine in the voting booth who will represent we the people in the halls of government. Through their actions, the commies are destroying our liberty at the ballot box with this purposeful invasion along our southern border. Anyway, here's the video continuing.
The inability to send people home meant that most people being arrested for illegal entry would either have to be detained or released. The current administration, however, from day one, made a point of decreasing the amount of detention space available nationwide. Immigration and Customs Enforcement's funding for detention has steadily been cut and private detention eliminated. The fact that so many illegal aliens are being released into the United States spread worldwide very quickly. As this happened, the numbers the Border Patrol encountered illegally crossing the border increased exponentially. The impact to me and my agents were significant. Sectors were ordered to take in and process all the illegal aliens encountered on the border. The Border Patrol saw groups of hundreds and thousands coming into the United States and turning themselves in. These numbers pulled 80, 90, sometimes 100% of the agents on duty away from the border. Border Patrol zones across Texas, Arizona, and California had no agent presence for weeks and months at a time. Those who did not want to be caught could simply walk in. We have no idea who and what entered our country over this time. Throughout 2022 and 23, I sent agents to Texas and Arizona to count gotaways. Those sectors could not even put enough agents in the field to see what they'd missed. Simultaneously, in San Diego, we had an exponential increase in significant interest aliens. These are aliens with significant ties to terrorism.
Okay, folks, another interjection in the testimony, because what follows is very important. What this man is about to testify to has me wondering why there are not arrests of the border czar and her senile boss, along with Secretary Mayorkas, happening right now for treason is beyond me. Pay really close attention to what this man has to say going forward. Let's get back to the video.
Prior to this administration, the San Diego sector averaged 10 to 15 SIA arrests per year. Once word was out the border was far easier to cross, San Diego went to over 100 SIAs in 2022, well over that in 2023, and even more than that registered this year. These are only the ones we caught. At the time, I was told I could not release any information on this increase in SIAs or mention any of the arrests. The administration was trying to convince the public there was no threat at the border.
Significant interest aliens, people. Our so-called leaders that are supposed to be in charge of protecting the homeland allow these SIA people to come into the country and roam freely. I'll let the rest of the video play now and pick this up on the other side.
Fentanyl is another issue. The San Diego area sees between 80 and 90% of the methamphetamine and fentanyl seizures annually for our entire country. With little enforcement at the border, these drugs were coming through en masse. During my last year in San Diego, the price for a single pill of fentanyl, for example, went from $10 to 25 cents. To make matters worse, during 2022 and 23, I had to shut down San Diego traffic checkpoints, which are critical for drug interdiction, because the resources had been diverted to the process and release mission. The large numbers also had and still have a negative impact on the San Diego community. I had to release illegal aliens by the hundreds each day into communities who could not support them. To quiet the problem, 2 flights a week were provided from San Diego to Texas. These flights simply brought aliens that would have been released in San Diego over to Texas. Each flight cost approximately $150,000. This was the administration's way to try and quiet the border-wide crisis. Once these flights were stopped and the releases continued, California saw the true economic impact. I received calls from the governor's office, local mayors, and hospital administrators asking me if we could keep injured aliens in custody so the federal government would pay the medical bills. Through pressure from the administration, my headquarters became more interested in the fiction that being portrayed in the media and not at all concerned with reality. Each time we asked for help in dealing with a new issue, it fell on deaf ears. At times in San Diego, we had 2,000 or more aliens sitting in between the fences asking to turn themselves in. I was told to move them out of sight of the media. Meanwhile, Border Patrol agents are continually forgotten and neglected by the media and this administration. These agents deal with death, women and children that have been raped, abused, trafficked, bought and sold, families that have spent months in terrible conditions, sickness, and despair. If you look at the dramatic rise in the number of suicides within the Border Patrol, it is directly correlated with the migrant surge. The agents have been pushed beyond their limit, and this has greatly impacted their physical and mental health. While current numbers of aliens crossing our border are lower in comparison in recent months, there's a reason for this. After nearly 4 years, this administration finally started to ask Mexico for help in slowing down the traffic through their country. This and other actions make a difference, but why has it taken so long? All of these tactics were being used before this administration took office, but this administration stopped or greatly limited them. I'm also concerned this will not be maintained. The problems we are facing at the border have solutions. These solutions can be quite simple and cost far less than the mess currently occupying so much time and money. The return to a policy of enforcing the law and returning illegal aliens to their home countries is required. Thank you.
Well, there you have it, folks. Sworn testimony about how the commies that are in charge of the levers of government right now have facilitated this invasion of illegal immigrants along our southern border. Not only facilitated it, but directed government employees to lie and hide the truth about this invasion from the American people and the media. Not that the media would have done anything about it, as evidenced by their recent transformation of the most unpopular vice president in our nation's history being elevated into levels of popularity that are impossible. This witness also spoke about the fentanyl crisis that is well known by, again, the government, specifically the government that's being run by the commies. They are not doing anything about it. Just like the gotaways, so frequently mentioned as it relates to illegal immigrants, we cannot forget about the got-throughs of the illegal drugs pouring across the border. Record amounts of drugs being seized also means exponentially more of those same drugs that get across the border undetected. I want to also call your attention to his testimony that mentioned the costs of illegal immigration. Not only in terms of medical treatment that is overwhelming hospitals in the border state, but the costs in terms of the lives of our Border Patrol agents. All this death and destruction within our nation caused by illegal immigration and an open border, purposeful death and destruction, can be laid right at the feet of those running the government right now. Now I want to get into what happened during that 3-on-1 debate that was hosted by ABC on the 10th of August. Let's point out some facts as well as some lies that go on to prove that it is the commies, along with their useful enablers in the media, like these two co-debaters, they are the true threat to the liberty of every American citizen, but not a threat to the drug cartels and human traffickers along the southern border. Here's the first bit I want to show you that is demonstrative of how the legacy mainstream media is nothing more than the propaganda arm of the modern Communist Party. Give this a listen.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America.
You notice how old David Muir chose his words quite carefully as he's about to ask Kamala a question. 3 years ago, the media assigned her a different title, and that was the title of border czar. As a matter of fact, that title was placed in the congressional record in March of last year, before she and Obama even executed the coup against Dementia Joe. Here's a screenshot of that congressional record in House Resolution 253. Nobody in the media tried to counter the border czar title last year. It is only since she became the Communist Party's candidate for president that they started to try and change that narrative. That is part of the reason that has led to this graph. Let's continue on with the 3-on-1 debate, folks.
We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem.
Did you catch that little fact at the beginning of that clip? The part where the co-debater stated that this past June, the child sniffer-in-chief implemented, quote, tough new asylum restrictions, unquote. Please consider that after all the talk in the media and by the Biden-Harris administration that the border couldn't be fixed without Congress. Yet border crossings went down after those new asylum restrictions. Right? Of course, that's just another example of the commies, and specifically the border czar, that they could have fixed the border problem without Congress doing anything. You have to ask yourselves why, ladies and gentlemen, and the simplest answer, Occam's razor, folks. They, being the commies, they didn't want to fix it. Now, what is Occam's razor, or the principle of parsimony? Well, that just means that the simplest, most elegant explanation is usually the one closest to the truth. They just didn't want to. There was actually a moment of truth that slipped past the commun's lips, though, when she said that Trump would rather run on a problem than fix a problem. That is her admitting there is a problem, and that she and her empty skull of a mentor created that problem. But folks, there's a bit of problem with that border bill that she and the rest of the commies talk about that was killed in the Congress that they do not really want to admit to. Here are some of the simple facts about that bill. Number one, that bill would have codified the Biden-Harris catch and release policy, meaning the bill would have changed their policy of flooding the the country with illegal immigrants from policy into law. Number two, it put a threshold of when to begin enforcement at 1.8 million illegal aliens, meaning that no action would be taken until after 1.8 million illegal immigrants had entered the country. That is like letting the population of the city of Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, enter the country before they start restricting, not stopping, entry into the country. Number three, the bill would continue funding of sanctuary cities in this country. Number four, it would also fund those NGOs, non-government organizations, that are facilitating the invasion along our border. And those NGOs operate in every state of the union. Number five, it would add to the already enormous cost of illegal immigration by providing illegal immigrants with taxpayer-funded lawyers. There was nothing in the bill that would fund the deportation of illegals, nor were there any additional funds for a border wall. It was a crap bill that was primarily put forward by Oklahoma Senator Langford, who you might hear about later in the next segment. But before I break from this segment, folks, let me give you a small example of what is at stake here in November. In this video clip, I found while doom scrolling and looking for video evidence of the commies being the biggest threat to our liberty, I came across this gem. Check it out.
On the other side of my, the other folks, Trump and his running mate, and they'll talk about, oh, well, yeah, but I do believe in the exception to save the mother's life. Okay, all right, let's break that down, shall we? Let's break that down. Let's break that down.
You have to laugh or cry at this point, folks. Either that clip gives credence to the talk about that evil woman's drinking problem, or in her attempts to fake another accent for whatever group she is pandering to, she comes across as a drunk. Either way, this communist is definitely not the person that could be sitting across the table from our nation's rivals or adversaries and speak from a position of power. Well, that's enough for this first segment, folks. So I'm going to break and I'll come right back with more video evidence about how it is really the commies that are a threat to our liberty. So stick with me. I'll be right back. Okay, folks, we're back. Just one more quick clip, actually two clips back to back, that demonstrate that Kamala is not a serious candidate for the office of president. In fact, she was only thrust in that position after Dementia Joe's mental decline was put on display for the world to see. And then the Obama machine had to get into action. They had to move quickly to get somebody into position. But watch these two videos and then ask yourself if this communist actually has any plans, or is really the DEI hire that most of America knows her to be. Here they are.
So I was raised as a middle-class kid.
I wonder if we can drill down on that a little bit. When we talk about bringing down prices and making life more affordable for people, what are one or two specific things you have in mind for that?
Well, I'll start with this. I grew up a middle-class kid.
That is two clips, two different occasions where this commie answers the "what is your economic plan" question. I grew up a middle-class kid. Just a little digging would expose that as problematic, folks. Of course, the mainstream media and other commies don't want you to know this little fact. From an article in People magazine, you know that magazine, right? That's the far-right conservative print and web news publication. But anyway, in an article that ran just last month, we find out that Kamala's mother, who primarily raised her, her mother had earned a doctorate in nutrition and endocrinology from UC Berkeley. She became a distinguished breast cancer researcher. According to an obituary published in the San Francisco Chronicle, Kamala's mother began her career conducting research at the school's zoology department and its cancer research lab. She published numerous notable research papers and spent time at many of the top research institutions in the U.S., as well as around the world. Sounds like a middle-class job to me. How about you? It's just more smoke and mirror, folks, all to convince the apathetic and low information voters in this nation to put a communist in the highest office of the land. Now let's shift our focus to the commies in general and move away from the potential national disaster of a Harris presidency. To frame the next series of video clips, I want you to all think about two of our most fundamental, constitutionally protected rights. Without the protection from government restriction of these two rights, there would be complete tyranny in our republic, which is, of course, why these two rights are constantly attacked by the communists. First, I'm going to show you a clip where the person is describing what has been happening in our nation for years now, but really kicked into high gear once the scandemic was foisted on the world. Give it a listen.
When the left uses the term like misinformation or hate speech, they're often referring to pretty normal political speech that they don't like, not things that are actually false. And of course, we both would defend people saying false things on the internet anyway,
Right.
because guess what? You're allowed to do that legally and constitutionally. But then you see what they're labeling as misinformation, and it makes it even worse because it's things like the vaccine doesn't stop you from getting COVID or spreading COVID, or the Hunter Biden laptop was
Right,
real.
right.
I mean, all of these political narratives that turned out to be true. And it's like, okay, you don't just want to crack down on people saying things that are wrong or false on the internet. You actually want to censor speech that is politically inconvenient to you because it threatens your ability to hold and retain power.
Catch that? Hold and retain power. A topic we talk about a lot on this program because that is the only thing the commies value, power. I read a post from the Tennessee Conservative that captures this perfectly and is why the commies need to retain control over government. Because the commies see the creator of the universe as a rival instead of a guidepost. They have to be at the helm of government and position that institution that was created to secure the people's liberty in direct opposition to God because they want to have government replace God in the people's lives. Now, the reason I showed that clip with Miss Amber Duke, the Washington editor of the news publication The Spectator, is because she was discussing these comments made by Hillary herself on Mad Cow Madow's program on the lead organization of commie propaganda, MSNBC. Give this a listen.
And boosting Trump back in 2016. But I also think there are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda. And whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrent.
No other words than wow, right? I mean, most of the people capable of critical thinking understand the commies want to censor free speech. But she is out in the open talking about civil and criminal penalties for people that are, quote unquote, boosting President Trump. Oh, and did you notice that she had to throw in 2016 in her comments, folks? Yep, she is still really burned over her loss in that election. We should take you back to last week's episode for a second on this censorship the commies want to engage in. What do you think is the ultimate way in which you can censor a person? We know that they want to censor President Trump, which is why I believe he holds so many outdoor live rallies. It is very hard, in fact, nearly impossible, to censor live events such as these rallies. Tucker Carlson mentions that as a reason for his cross-country events that have been going on for a while now. Anyway, let's examine the ways in which the commies have tried to censor President Trump. First, in 2015, during the campaign, they tried to censor him using ridicule, straight out of Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. And that didn't work, in part because his many rallies during the 2016 campaign. Then once he won the presidency, they tried to censor him through impeachment, twice. That didn't work either. Next were the many criminal charges, fanny charges that are now mostly blown up. So is Jack Smith's federal charges and the classified documents in January 6 cases, which are now mostly blown up as well. The fake felony trial in New York City that will be overturned on appeal, as well as the real estate fraud charges, and in addition to those made up sexual assault charges. In all of those cases, which were political in nature, the former president was denied many constitutional protections. But hey, none of those charges have resulted in President Trump being censored. In fact, He has not only become more popular, but I believe it has egged him on even more. So what is that so far? Ridicule, impeachment, and criminal charges. None of that has worked. So again, what is the next way a person can be censored? Of course, he has to be assassinated. Assassination is the ultimate method of censorship. And they have tried it twice now, and there will more likely be more attempts. Why? Well, it's because Donald Trump represents a true threat to their hold on power. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, what is the second fundamental constitutionally protected right the commies are going after? Yep, the right to keep and bear arms. Again, why are they attacking that right so vigorously? Same reason as attacking the right to free speech, folks. An armed population is also a threat to the commies keeping their hold on power. Next up is a clip of commie law trying to appeal to the uneducated and low information voters out there as it relates to her position on the Second Amendment. Give it a listen.
Kamala Harris, gun ownership. I and Tim Walz are both gun owners. We will not take anybody's guns away. We also need to have reasonable gun safety laws. I believe that we need an assault weapons ban. We need universal background checks. We need red flag laws. We can support the Second Amendment, as I do, and also agree that we need some reasonable laws.
Somebody explain to me how supporting the Second Amendment, which has the plain language in it, how the government can pass an assault weapons ban without a definition of exactly what an assault weapon is, other than it's a mean-looking firearm. Now, how can the government pass an assault weapons ban, pass red flag laws, circumvent every American citizen's right to due process, as well as background checks, which is nothing more than the government creating a list of who owns a firearm? How is that not in direct violation of, quote, shall not be infringed, unquote? Well, intelligent people know that all those things violate the Second Amendment. The Supreme Court has also come down in the Bruin decision that further explains exactly what does infringe upon the people's right to keep and bear arms, and yet here we are. With the Communist Party's candidate for president saying things that are diametrically opposed to each other, the low information and communist voters buy into that hook, line, and sinker. What is somewhat hilarious about that campaign ad is how it relates to this next clip. Give it a listen.
It's people who own guns who are quietly sitting on those guns, and those guns might end up being the weapons of the destruction of a community because they get in the hands of some kid who decides that they like what they see on television and they want to act that way. So this is about just basically saying that we're going to require responsible behaviors among everybody in the community, and just because you legally possess a gun in the sanctity of your locked home doesn't mean that we're not going to walk into that home and check to see if you're being responsible and safe in the way you conduct your affairs.
That right there, folks, is the real communist Kamala. Remember when she stated that her values have not changed? That clip of her from way back before even her days as a senator shows how she and the rest of the communists feel about our Constitution and its limitations on government power. Because if you didn't realize it, in that video, she is talking about the government violating the citizens' Second, Fourth, Fifth, and 14th Amendment protections of our rights. The right to keep and bear arms unfringed, the protection against unreasonable searches, and the citizens' constitutionally protected rights to due process. That is what she and the commies value. The shredding of our Constitution and the removal of our freedoms, our liberty. Of course, the commies wouldn't be who they are without demonstrating a bit of hypocrisy, though, now, would they? Keep in mind, it isn't really hypocrisy, it's hierarchy. In other words, rules for thee and not for me. Here is a clip from Kamala's softball interview on Oprah the other day. Give it a listen.
I'm a gun owner. Tim Walz is a gun. I did not know that. If somebody breaks in my house, they're getting shot.
Yes, I hear that. I hear that.
Probably should not have said that. But my staff will deal with that later.
Yep, she can have a firearm to defend herself, but not you. because they want you dependent on government and their firearms. If you want to see what the typical type of quote unquote white dudes for Harris looks like, here's a bit more from that interview. Pay attention to the man and how he is forced into applauding by the young lady sitting right next to him. Watch this.
And these are just common sense.
This 300-pound man was genuinely afraid of the around 95-pound young lady sitting right next to him, snapping her fingers at him to get him to applaud. I have many more of these clips, ladies and gentlemen, but I've run out of time for this week's episode. I'll share some of the ones not included in this show on my website and on my socials with some commentary, so be sure and check them out. I do want to share this last one, though, and it demonstrates perfectly what a non-serious candidate this communist is and how much of a threat to our liberty she would be if she were to win the election. I'll explain why after you watch Kamala debate her own worst enemy in the following clip. And that enemy will be herself. So give this a listen.
My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to startup small businesses. But we've got to increase the corporate tax rate. State taxes are going to have to go up. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people.
I will snatch their patent so that we will take over. The question is, do you have the will to do it? I have the will to do it.
The cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people.
Bidenomics is working. It's working. It's a term we're very proud of, I must tell you.
I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies. Now, I will tell you the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you.
It was hardworking patriots like you who built this country, and it's hardworking patriots like you who are going to save our country.
I will not ban fracking. I'm in favor of banning fracking. It has to be legislation, but yes, and this is something I've taken on in California. I have a history of working on this issue. When it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the former president said, stand back and stand by.
But you have to go home now. We have to have peace.
These dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again.
Name a favorite candidate. It used to be Joe Biden. Support Ms. Harris. So that is what we are going to do.
What I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible. One who brings a sense of optimism.
We all sing happy tunes and sing Merry Christmas and wish each other Merry Christmas. How dare we speak Merry Christmas? How dare we?
Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away, so stop with the continuous lying about this stuff.
We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program.
Belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page.
Don't you find some of their stuff to just be plain weird?
That compilation demonstrates that she will take any position her handlers tell her to take and speak any words they tell her to speak, even if they are provable lies, so that the commies can maintain power. Remember, power is the only thing they worship, and Kamala is just another tool for them to keep that power. And this final clip right here is all you need to remember going forward.
And yeah, I am radical. I do believe that we need to get radical about what we are doing and take it seriously.
Yes, folks, the commies, especially with this woman in charge, will be the biggest threat to liberty in our nation. Our republic may not survive if she were to win. So vote and bring as many people as possible with you to the polls that you can. Rent a bus, rent a van. Just get as many Republicans to the voting booth as possible. Well, that's enough evidence for this week's show, ladies and gentlemen. Trust me, if you just do a cursory look, you can find the same things for yourself. So whenever a Democrat or lefty or even a moderate or independent tries to counter the fact that it is the commies that want to destroy our liberty, use their own words against them. For now, please stick with me after this quick break for God's word along with my closing thoughts. So I'll be right back. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I want to let you all know that I deeply appreciate you tuning in this week. If you listen to this show on Apple or Spotify, please give the show a review on those platforms. As it relates to the Spotify platform, participate in the poll questions I occasionally ask on those episodes. You can watch the show on Rumble and ScrewTube and even TikTok. Do me a favor, download the Rumble app and subscribe to the show there. It's completely free. Give the show a thumbs up on either of those platforms too. Please share these episodes on your social media accounts, and if you get nasty comments from the trolls and bots, you can do what I discussed last week. Block the account and delete the comments. This week's wisdom from God's Word comes to us from the Book of Wisdom, and that is Proverbs chapter 18, verse 9. Whoever is slack in his work is a brother to him who destroys. Every citizen's work in our constitutional republic is to participate in our system of self-governance. Scrutinize the people running for office. It is too late to do so in many of the states because the primary is over, but do so in the future. Look into who is financing these candidates. Are these candidates, especially ones that did win their primaries, are they receiving any money from anti-Second Amendment groups, directly or indirectly? It is up to the citizen to fully investigate these people because money talks and BS walks, as the old saying goes. If we are slack in our work of self-governance, we end up with the people in government that we currently have right now. Early voting will be taking place in Tennessee from October 16th through the 31st. I will be voting early, and I'm encouraging everybody else to do the same. Bank your votes. If you live in Sevier County and are a Republican voter and would like to vote early, but you don't have transportation, send me an email, larry@libertyleadershipandlies.com. We can work it out so that I can give you a ride to one of the early voting locations. I would also like to encourage my fellow Sevier County Republicans to offer the same assistance to people that can't get to the voting booths. Vote early and bring as many people with you as possible. Well, that's it for this week, folks. Until next week, stand in the arena with me, reveling. It's time to wake up.